never planned to tell anyone about what happened after midnight, because even now, years later, I still catch myself wondering if exhaustion invented half of it. But there's one detail I can't explain away. It wasn't the strange motel. It wasn't the empty highway. It wasn't even the person who seemed to know my name before I ever spoke. It was what I found the next morning inside my backpack, a photograph I had never taken, showing me asleep from only a few feet away. At the time, I was 29 and had spent the better part of 2 years traveling alone across the United States. Freelance photography gave me enough freedom to chase forgotten roads, abandoned towns, and overlooked landscapes. I wasn't looking for haunted places or ghost stories. I was looking for quiet. The farther I drove from crowded cities, the easier it became to breathe. Traveling alone taught me to trust my instincts, double-check every motel lock, and never ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. That habit had kept me safe through hundreds of nights, until the one that still doesn't make sense. The drive started outside Flagstaff, Arizona. My goal was to reach a tiny mountain community in western New Mexico before sunrise. A retired park ranger I'd interviewed months earlier had recommended an overlook where, according to him, the stars looked close enough to touch. He'd laughed when he described it and scribbled the location onto the back of a receipt. "Don't rely on GPS out there," he'd warned. "Half the roads disappear before the maps notice." Around 10 that evening, the interstate gave way to narrower highways lined with pine forests. Cell service faded until my phone displayed a lonely message. No signal. I wasn't worried. My gas tank was nearly full, the weather was clear, and I'd driven roads like this dozens of times before. By 11:30, the traffic had completely disappeared. Not less traffic. None. No. Headlights in either direction. No distant TAILLIGHTS. No trucks. Nothing. The silence became noticeable every time I stopped at an intersection. Even with the windows cracked, I couldn't hear insects or wind moving through the trees. The forest looked alive under the moonlight, but it sounded like someone had muted the entire world. A few minutes before midnight, I noticed something strange in my rearview mirror. Headlights. Far behind me. I relaxed. Immediately. Another driver for almost 15 minutes. Those headlights stayed exactly the same distance back. They never gained on me. They never fell behind. Every curve I took, they mirrored perfectly. I figured we were both driving cautiously through unfamiliar mountain roads. Then, I slowed almost 20 miles below the speed limit. The headlights slowed to. I accelerated. They matched my speed within seconds. A cold sensation crept into my stomach. Pulled into a gravel turnout overlooking a canyon, expecting the other vehicle to continue past. Instead, the headlights stopped nearly 200 yards behind me. They didn't pull alongside. They didn't turn around. They just waited. The engine remained running. I couldn't make out the vehicle itself because the headlights were aimed directly toward me, washing everything else into darkness. For nearly a minute, neither of us moved. I reached for my camera, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Before I could raise it, the headlights switched off. Instantly. The darkness swallowed the road. I stared into the blackness, expecting the outline of a truck or SUV to appear as my eyes adjusted. Nothing. No door opened. No engine. No footsteps. Just darkness. After another minute, I decided I'd had enough. I got back onto the highway and drove away without looking back again. I told myself the driver had probably turned around. That explanation lasted exactly 6 minutes, because the headlights reappeared behind. aimed at the same distance, the same speed, as though they'd never disappeared at all, by 12:15. I abandoned the plan to reach the overlook. I wanted a room, a locked door, and a few hours of sleep before continuing in daylight. The problem was there wasn't supposed to be anything out there. Yet around the next bend, a faded wooden sign emerged from the trees. Pine Haven Motor Lodge. One vacancy. The neon vacancy sign flickered unevenly, buzzing louder than it should have in the otherwise silent night. The building looked untouched since the late 70s. 2 stories, green paint peeling from weathered wood, a row of identical doors facing the parking lot. Only 3 vehicles sat. Outside, an old pickup coated in dust, a silver sedan with fogged windows, and a dark station wagon parked beneath a burned-out light. I glanced behind me. The headlights were gone. Not driving away, just gone. If you're into horror scary story, experiences that blur the line between coincidence and something far harder to explain, this is a good place to subscribe to Eerie Atmos X, because some places don't let you leave with only memories, and this one didn't let me leave with all of mine. I stepped into the office. A brass bell rested on the counter beside a handwritten sign reading, "Back in a minute." The lobby smelled faintly of old carpet, coffee, and cedar wood. A grandfather clock ticked steadily in one corner. Then someone spoke behind me. "You made good time." I nearly jumped. An elderly woman stood in the doorway holding a mug of tea. She smiled politely. "From Arizona," she said casually. "You left later than you planned." I laughed awkwardly. "Have we met before?" She shook her head. "No." The answer came so quickly it sounded rehearsed. She slid a registration card across the counter. As I filled out my name, I noticed something odd. Every previous guest had signed using blue ink. Mine was the only black pen on the counter. Without thinking, I reached into my pocket and used my own pen instead. For the first time, her smile faded. "You should use ours. I prefer mine. It's easier if everyone uses the same one." Something about the way she said everyone made my skin prickle. I finished signing and handed the form back. She stared at my signature for several seconds before placing it face down. "You'll be in room 12. She paused. "If you hear someone knocking after midnight," she looked directly into my eyes, "don't answer unless they say your name." I waited for her to smile, to admit it was an old joke she played on travelers. She never did. Instead, she handed me the room key, an actual metal key. As I walked across the parking lot, I noticed every curtain was closed, except one. On the second floor, someone stood behind that window, perfectly still, watching me. I stopped walking without realizing it. The figure upstairs didn't move when I looked directly at it. There wasn't enough light to make out a face, only the outline of someone standing inches behind the glass. I raised a hand in an awkward wave, the kind you give a stranger after accidentally making eye contact. Nothing. Not even the slightest shift of posture. The curtain slowly drifted shut on its own. There wasn't any wind. I told myself whoever was inside simply stepped away from the window, pulling the curtain as they left. I held on to that explanation as tightly as I could while unlocking room 12. The room was cleaner than I expected. Old but spotless. A queen-size bed, a wooden dresser, a small television with rabbit ear antennas, and a bathroom that smelled faintly of bleach. After hours on the road, it felt almost comforting. I locked the door, slid the chain into place, checked the bathroom. and even opened the closet. Empty. I dropped my backpack onto the chair and plugged my phone into the charger. Still no signal. The digital clock on the wash on the nightstand blinked 12:21. Curious, I parted the curtain just enough to peek through. The old pickup was where I'd first seen it. The silver sedan hadn't moved. The station wagon was still parked. Beneath the broken light. No people. No headlights. No sounds. It felt less like a motel and more like a photograph. I laughed quietly at myself. Long drives have a way of making ordinary places feel strange. I took a quick shower, reviewed the pictures I'd taken earlier that day, and stretched out across the bed. Sleep came faster than I expected. Then someone knocked. 3 slow taps. Not loud, just enough to wake me. My eyes opened to darkness. The blinking clock now read 12:47. For several seconds I didn't move. Then the second knock came. 3 taps again, evenly spaced. I remembered the woman behind the front desk. If you hear someone knocking after midnight, don't answer unless they say your name. A nervous smile crossed my face. Coincidence. Probably another guest at the wrong room. I stayed quiet. Knocking stopped. Relief washed over me so quickly I almost laughed. Then I heard footsteps outside, not walking, away, walking slowly across the wooden walkway in front of my room. They reached my window. Stopped. I could feel someone standing on the other side of the curtain. Every instinct told me not to look. The silence stretched so long that I convinced myself nobody was really there. Then came a soft voice. Wrong room. A man's voice, barely louder than a whisper. The footsteps continued down the walkway until they disappeared. I waited another 5 minutes before daring to look. Outside, the parking lot was empty. I checked the peephole in the door. Nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself the guest had realized their mistake and left. It wasn't scary anymore. Just unusual. Around 1:30, sleep finally returned. The dream began almost immediately. I was driving the same highway again. The road looked identical, except for one thing. Every mile marker displayed the same number. No matter how far I drove, the trees became thicker. The road narrowed until it was barely wide enough for my SUV. Then I noticed someone standing in the middle of the pavement, the elderly woman from the office. She wasn't blocking the road. She was looking behind me. Not at me. Behind me. Her mouth moved. I couldn't hear the words. She pointed toward my rearview mirror. When I looked into it, my reflection wasn't driving. It was asleep. Its head rested against the steering wheel while the vehicle continued moving on its own. I woke with a violent gasp. The room was freezing, cold enough that my breath hung faintly in the air. The air conditioner had stopped running. The clock read 2:16. I reached for my phone to use its flashlight. Battery was dead. That didn't make sense. It had been nearly full before I fell asleep. A faint scraping noise came from above. Not footsteps. Something heavier. Like furniture being dragged slowly across a wooden floor. Back. And forth. It continued for almost a minute before stopping all at once. Then another sound. This time beneath me, a soft metallic click. Another. As if someone was trying different keys in different locks. Room by room. The sounds moved steadily closer. Click. Pause. Click. Pause. I sat upright in bed without taking my eyes off the door. Click. The room beside mine. Click. dot closer, dot click, dot directly. Outside dot, the doorknob turned halfway, dot stopped, dot turned. Again, dot very slowly. The chain held firm, but whoever was outside wasn't trying to force it. Almost like they expected the door to unlock itself. After several long seconds, the handle returned to its normal position. The footsteps continued down the walkway. Only after they faded did I realize I'd been holding my breath. I waited another 10 minutes before convincing myself to check the lock. The chain remained secure. The deadbolt hadn't moved. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, except the motel key. I had placed it on the nightstand before going to sleep. Now it rested neatly on top of my backpack across the room. I stared at it for several seconds, trying to remember if I'd moved it after waking up. Maybe I had. People do strange things when they're half asleep. I wanted that explanation to be true. I really did. Then I noticed something tucked beneath the key. A folded piece of motel stationery. My name was written across the front. Not printed, written, in blue ink. My hand stayed frozen above the backpack. I knew I hadn't seen that folded paper before I went to bed. The backpack had been zipped shut when I fell asleep. Now the zipper was halfway open. I looked toward the door. The chain was still in place. The window remained locked from the inside. Every part of my mind searched for a practical explanation. Maybe the note had slipped out earlier. Maybe fatigue was playing tricks on me. None of those explanations answered one question. Why was my name written in blue ink? The woman at the office had insisted I use the motel's blue pen. I'd signed with my own black one. Slowly, I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was careful, almost elegant. You answered the wrong voice once. Don't answer it again. That was it. No signature. No explanation. A chill crawled up my spine. Whoever wrote it already knew something that had happened only an hour earlier. The whisper outside my window. Wrong room. I hadn't answered aloud. At least, I didn't think I had. I replayed the moment over and over. I remembered sitting up in bed. I remembered hearing the whisper. What I couldn't remember was whether I'd instinctively whispered something back. Even a single word. My mouth felt dry. I suddenly became aware that the room wasn't silent anymore. A faint humming drifted through the wall behind the bed. Not electrical. Human. The same 4 notes again and again. Softly. Patiently. Almost like it was waiting for someone to join in. I pulled the bed a few inches away from the wall. The humming stopped immediately. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I grabbed the flashlight from my camera bag. Unlike my phone, its battery still worked. The narrow beam swept across the room. Nothing unusual. Until it reached the mirror above the dresser. Realized I was looking at fingerprints. Dozens of them. Pressed against the inside, not the outside. The prints looked as though someone had placed both hands against the back of the mirror. Trapped behind the glass, I stepped closer. The flashlight reflected into my eyes. The fingerprints vanished, only my own reflection remained. I laughed once, short, nervous, forced. Hearing my own voice helped. It reminded me there was still a rational world outside this room. I decided I wasn't spending another minute there. I threw my charger into the backpack, zipped it shut, grabbed the key, and opened the door. The cold hit me immediately. The parking lot was covered in a thin layer of fog that hadn't been there earlier. Not thick enough to hide everything, just enough to blur edges. The office light was still on. I hurried across the gravel. The bell above the office door jingled as I stepped inside. Empty. The mug of tea still sat on the counter. Steam no longer rose from it. The grandfather clock ticked steadily. Hello? No answer. I walked behind the counter. A narrow hallway led toward what looked like the owner's living quarters. Every door stood open. Every room was empty. The bed had been made. The kitchen sink was dry. It felt less like someone had left for a moment, and more like they had disappeared in the middle of an ordinary evening. As I returned to the lobby, something caught my eye. The guest register. The same book I'd signed earlier. I flipped back through the pages. Most entries listed names, dates, license plate numbers. Normal. Until I reached the current page. My signature wasn't there. The line where I'd written it was completely blank. Every previous guest remained. Only mine had vanished. I turned another page. Then another dot near the back of the book. I found my name. Written in blue ink. The date beside it wasn't today's. It was tomorrow's. Under the room number, someone had written a single sentence. Checked out at 12:43 a.m. I looked at the clock on the wall. It read 3:02. My pulse hammered in my ears. According to the register, I had already left. The office lights flickered once, twice, then went out. The building plunged into darkness. Outside, an engine started. Headlights spilled through the front windows. The same headlights. The ones that had followed me for miles. This time they weren't parked across the lot. They were slowly rolling toward the office. I ducked below the counter without thinking. Gravel crunched beneath heavy tires. The engine idled just outside. A car door opened. Footsteps. Measured. Unhurried. The office door creaked open. I could only see a pair of worn boots from where I crouched. They stopped beside the counter. Whoever had entered didn't speak, didn't search, didn't move. They simply stood there. After nearly a minute, another voice came from outside. Clear, calm. My name is Daniel. The person inside the office immediately walked back out. No hesitation, no reply, just turned and left. A second later, tires rolled across the gravel. The headlights disappeared. I stayed hidden until dawn began tinting the windows gray. Only then did I climb to my feet. The office door stood open. Outside, every vehicle was gone. The pickup, the sedan, the station wagon. Even the tire tracks had vanished from the gravel. The motel looked abandoned. Not temporarily. For years, paint peeled from warped walls. Several windows were broken. Weeds pushed through cracked pavement. I slowly turned toward room 12. The second floor window where I'd seen someone watching me the night before was missing entirely. There wasn't even any glass left in the frame. Just darkness inside. For several long seconds I stood perfectly still, trying to convince myself that the early morning light was changing the way everything looked. Then I looked at my SUV. A thick layer of dust coated the windshield. Not the kind that settles overnight. The kind that collects after weeks or months without moving. I wiped a line across the glass with my sleeve. Beneath the dust was a small piece of folded paper, tucked under the driver's side wiper. My pulse jumped again. The paper wasn't wet from morning dew. It was perfectly dry. The handwriting matched the note from my room. Blue ink. You left before he learned your name. I looked around the empty parking lot. The trees surrounding the property were silent. No birds. No insects. No breeze. Only the distant creak of an old motel sign swaying without any visible wind. I unlocked the SUV and climbed inside. The engine started immediately, as though nothing unusual had happened. The dashboard clock flashed 12:44. Not 6:30, not sunrise. 12:44. Exactly 1 minute after the time written in the guest register. My phone, which had died during the night, suddenly powered itself on. The screen displayed dozens of missed notifications as the signal returned. Then one voicemail, time-stamped 12:41 a.m. I didn't recognize the number. I pressed play. For several seconds, there was only static. Then I heard my own voice, breathing hard. "Don't tell him my name, please. Just don't." The recording ended. I had never made that call. At least I had no memory of making it. The logical part of my brain finally won. I put the SUV into gear and drove. I didn't look back. Not once. Within 20 minutes, I reached a gas station outside a small town. The bright fluorescent lights and the smell of fresh coffee felt almost unreal after the silence of the night. The cashier looked up with tired eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh, paid for coffee, and asked the question that had been growing heavier in my mind. "Is there a place around here called Pine Haven Motor Lodge?" The cashier stopped pouring coffee. "Who told you about that?" "I stayed there last night." For a moment he simply stared. Then he slowly shook his head. "You couldn't have. My grandfather used to maintain that property. It closed almost 18 years ago." I smiled politely, assuming he was mistaken. There was an older woman working the front desk. There wasn't. There isn't a guest book anymore. His expression never changed. The county condemned the place after a fire. Nobody's been allowed inside since. The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. I thanked him and left. Outside, I opened my laptop using the cafe's Wi-Fi. Old newspaper archives appeared after a few searches. There it was. Pine Haven Motor Lodge, closed. Condemned. An electrical fire had swept through one wing nearly 2 decades earlier. No guests had died, but the owners disappeared several weeks after the investigation. Their truck was eventually found abandoned in another state. No explanation. No suspects. The article included a faded photograph. The elderly woman from the office stood beside the motel sign, smiling at the camera. I shut the laptop so quickly it nearly slipped off the table. That should have been enough. It should have become nothing more than a strange memory. But 2 weeks later, after returning home to Colorado, I unpacked my camera equipment. Every photo from the Arizona trip was intact. Everything. Except the final night. Every image taken after 10 p.m. had disappeared, except one. I didn't remember taking it. The picture showed the front of Pine Haven Motor Lodge under moonlight. Room 12 was visible on the second floor. Standing outside the door. Was me. Not entering, not leaving, standing perfectly still, looking directly toward the parking lot. The camera angle couldn't have come from a tripod. Someone had been standing several feet behind me. Someone else had taken the photograph. I zoomed in until the image became grainy, beyond my shoulder. Parked beneath the broken light sat the dark station wagon. The driver's door was open. A man stood beside it. His face was hidden in shadow, but one hand rested on the roof. Waiting. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking straight into the camera, as though he knew exactly who would eventually examine that photograph. I deleted the image, formatted the memory card. A week later, while organizing client files, the same photograph appeared inside a completely different folder. No copy history. No backup. No cloud sync. Just the same image. Exactly where it shouldn't have been. I never found an explanation. I stopped traveling alone after that. Not because I believed in ghosts, because every unexplained detail pointed toward something far more unsettling. Someone or something had been following rules I didn't understand. Rules that seemed to revolve around one simple thing. Names. Since that night, whenever an unfamiliar voice calls out to me in an airport, a hotel lobby, or a quiet parking lot after dark, I never answer immediately. I wait. I make them tell me who they're looking for first. It may sound irrational, but every once in a while, they simply walk away, and on those nights, I can't help wondering whose name they were hoping I'd give them instead. So now I have one question for you. If you'd found yourself alone at that motel after midnight, would you have opened the door, or would you have stayed silent? Let everyone know in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious how long you think you could have trusted your own instincts. And if this story stays with you long after the screen goes dark, share it with someone who loves psychological horror and true scary stories. Just make sure they remember one thing. If a stranger calls your name in the middle of the night, be absolutely certain they should know it in the first place.